Whether or not the Maya accurately predicted the relative location of the Earth, the Sun, and the center of the Milky Way galaxy on December 21, 2012, the fabled galactic alignment, their observation of the heavens above directly influenced their worldview below on Earth. The Mayan shamans, or spiritual leaders, used hallucinogenic plants and substances to enter an altered state from which they were able to bring back wisdom and knowledge, enabling them to interpret their heavenly observations.
Izapa really was a kind of New World Eleusis. In the Old World, Eleusis was a place where seekers were initiated into the sacred mysteries. And at Izapa, initiates, those seeking knowledge, were brought through a process of understanding this new galactic cosmology. And clearly, sacred plants was part of this. We know that ritual mushroom stones were found in the region around Izapa, so we know that there was a kind of mushroom cult going on there. And we also know that dimethyltryptamine is a powerful hallucinogenic that can be harvested from the glands of the bufo toad. And Stela 6 at Izapa, for example, depicts the bufo toad, and it actually shows the toad's glands with vision scrolls coming out of the glands. This actually indicates a very clear proof that they were aware of the vision-producing effects of the gland secretions. So it's very clear that Izapa was an initiatory center that utilized hallucinogenic plants and substances in order to facilitate expansion of consciousness so that larger perspectives could be embraced.
The Inca, the Hopi, the Mayans were all shamanic cultures, and they entered into altered states of awareness in order to access this body of wisdom, which is infinite. So to do that, they had to step outside of ordinary time, which is the opportunity we all have today as we come to the end of time, is to step into infinity, to step into this body of ancient wisdom.
We can learn from ancient civilizations. And so I hope I've played some part in reintroducing the wisdom of the ancient world to the modern world and helping people to open their eyes and open their ears and hear what the ancients have to say to us. And more recently also the recognition that the shamans of tribal and hunter-gatherer societies around the world, with their systems and techniques for contacting the spirit realm directly, also have a great deal to teach us. So, I would advocate a kind of reversal of the normal order of things. It's not we in our scientific and technological world where everything is rooted and grounded in a material and mechanistic view of the universe. It is not we who may place ourselves above the civilizations of antiquity. We may not say that we are greater than or better than the shaman in a small village in the Amazon. Those civilizations of antiquity and those tribal shamans today have a huge amount to teach us, and we can only recover the better part of ourselves if we are willing to listen to what they have to say. So I suppose that's what I've tried to do. I've tried to say this that came before, this knowledge of the spirit world that shamans still possess today, this is what really matters about us. Let's listen to it.
Sacred plants will give you access. They'll give you access to these domains, but that's the easy way. Shamanic training is very rigorous. It demands that you spend time in nature and vision quest, and not just increase the serotonin levels in your brain so you can experience the divine for a fleeting moment and then come back into a life that is hell. So you have to be willing to pay your dues, to do the work, to spend time in nature, to spend time with yourself, and not just increase the levels of dopamine or certain brain chemicals that stimulate bliss. The psychedelics have opened the doors for many people in the West, but opening the doors and walking through them are very different things.
Ultimately, no one can be sure what 2012 will bring. Cascading crises climaxing in some sort of apocalyptic event, or advancement into an enlightened era of human existence. However, Most researchers who have studied the ancient mythology carefully bring back a message of hope, albeit one that requires us to participate and help bring about a new golden age.
I think that the core teachings are there and present in the Maya creation myth. And it does relate to the galactic alignment. It relates to this opportunity that we have to reconnect with our true selves, with the unity consciousness, through which we can solve the intractable dilemmas of the world. We have to get back to that unity consciousness and awareness of how we as individuals fit into the whole. This is not a call to annihilate the ego or to annihilate our sense of individuality. It's really a call to be aware of our individuality at the same time that we're aware of the larger picture. But it does require that we choose to be actively engaged in the process. It's not something that's going to happen automatically. That's kind of the interpretation of a cop-out or something like that. We really have to understand that we do have a choice, but we can choose to close down in fear and succumb to the forces of limitation that seek to keep us limited, keep us stuck to our egos, or we can open up in trust and respect for what is possible.
For me, part of the essential, kind of shift in consciousness that we may be undergoing is this kind of integration of empirical, rational, scientific thought and intuitive, shamanic, and mystical knowledge systems. And for me, it's really as those two aspects come together, this next level of human consciousness is beginning to be formed and to sort of recognize itself. And that's actually what I see the archetype of Quetzalcoatl also kind of indicating or representing as an archetype. It's the meaning of bird and snake, the feathered serpent. So it's the meaning of heaven and earth, spirit and matter, or it could be seen as the meaning of the materialist, empirical thrust of Western culture with the esoteric and mystical framework of indigenous cultures and Eastern cultures. So for me, like, one thing that's really important that's been happening lately in the last 50 years has been the integration of Eastern metaphysical thought into the Western psyche. So like everywhere you go, like every airplane, people are reading Thich Nhat Hanh, the Dalai Lama, Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. I mean, that's Vedanta philosophy re-expressed for the European Western mindset. So people still sort of tend to think of spirituality as a trend in a way, but I don't like the word spirituality very much. But I think it's much closer to being a profound and transformative shift in our psyche. So now I think there's a second stage in that initiatory process going on for the Western psyche, but it's happening on a much more foundational level because so many more people have made those kind of connections and have had those kind of experiences and have kind of integrated to a much deeper level.
According to the Maya beliefs, this cycle is the cycle of the death. So probably they trace this exact day, December 21, 2012, because this is the time when all the death is going to stop. And it's going to start another cycle of rebirth, peace, but it can represent a lot of things. I'm sure that the world is not going to end in that specific date. Another cycle is going to begin.
The concept that this end date or completion date of the Mayan calendar has some relevance to the world in a global sense, I think is a fallacious thought. Because this system is a particular system that was developed for and by Maya, for their particular ideology, for their particular place in the world. It would be a mistake to rally around a philosophy that has its place in its history and in its world and appropriate it as something that belongs to a global sense.
As we come to the end of the calendar, we're going to be emerging into a millennium of gold, millennium of opportunity, a time of living at peace with each other, of clean rivers, of clean air. Our challenge today is to embody the prophecies, to become that human after 2012 that I refer to as Homo luminous. But that's not guaranteed. We think that we can postpone making the tough choices. Well, the time is today.
I'm very much aware of all the prophecies and all the talk and discussion about 2012, but then I also lived through the Russians going to kill us next week in the Cold War and the harmonic convergence and Y2K. And I think my first piece of advice to people is don't sell your house and move to the mountains, because I think there's every likelihood that in 2013 your bills will still be coming in.
There's a rift between East and West that is increasing at exponential speed. I see it every day. I mean, I live in the Middle East and I see it growing every day. It's based on total misunderstanding of each other. And this misunderstanding stems from the way that we have developed our cultures. We do not use the common denominators anymore. Ultimately, we're all children on this planet. We belong to the same planet. What we have done is segregate this and separated these beliefs through religious orders, through nationalistic orders. We're in dire need for a message. We need visionaries who make us see things in the right way. We need to realign ourselves into a form of thinking. We need to remove the differences between us. We need to remove the strong religious rifts. We need to remind ourselves that even if we are to have religion, that it springs from the same source, which is ironic because the three major Semitic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, are literally from the same source, from the Old Testament. And yet we've slaughtered each other for centuries. Why? Because we've taken that common denominator and isolated it to create different power bases. Somehow we need to realign on this.
Is there going to be a cataclysm? Is it bad news for us? Or is it more like, boy, by getting together and bringing ourselves together, we can somehow make the world change? It's the latter part that appealed so much to people when they read about the Maya, because the Maya developed a participatory cosmology. It's all about human action and what you must do as a human being to perpetuate the status quo in the universe or to change it. It's up to you. You can do it. And here we sit in the year 2012 approaching, not being able to do a damn thing about the Big Bang or evolution, and that bothers us. We want a cosmology in which we can participate. The Maya had it. And so we look to them and say, well, maybe we can learn something from them. And I'm all for it. I mean, I think there'll be a positive outcome from the 2012 hype and mania, as I characterized it, because perhaps it'll make us take our cosmology a bit more seriously, look into it a bit more, think a little bit more about collective human consciousness, think a little bit more about what we can do to make the world a better place. That's a great message. And if that's what comes out of all of this, I'm a happy camper, as we say.
I think we have gone through and are going through the final stages of a very dark age, but I also see glimmers of hope everywhere I look. I see people who are no longer willing to have their thoughts and their consciousness patrolled and controlled by others, who seek direct spiritual contact, who recognize that the established monotheistic religions, whether Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, while they might have been instruments of liberation at some time in the past, are now primarily instruments of oppression and hold down and suppress the human spirit. And I see everywhere around me people reaching out to bypass that monolithic block of established religion and make their own contacts and own connections with the spirit realm. I do see a new birth of human consciousness underway, and when these things happen, they can sometimes happen very, very fast. So I do not rule out at all the possibility that all of us are going to be looking at the mystery and meaning of life in a very different way very soon. And that date, 21st of December 2012, sticks in my mind as one that is really worthy of consideration.